Welcome to Growing Your Firm Podcast, the podcast for ambitious accounting professionals who are ready to accelerate their growth, presented by Jetpack Workflow. Hey everyone, David Costello here from Growing Your Firm Podcast and Jetpack Workflow. Today's guest is Hector Garcia. He is the owner and founder of Quick Bookkeeping and Accounting LLC. We started hearing Hector's name a couple weeks ago, and it's one of those names that we heard it once, then we heard it twice, then we heard it 3 times and 4 times. We kept hearing it again and again and again. He recently came up as one of the accountants to watch, as talked about Accounting Today. He's been featured across Intuit's content network, and like I mentioned, we've just heard his name so many times that we had to bring him on today's show. Hector, welcome.
Hey, thank you. How are you? Thank you. That's a really nice introduction. Remind me to send you a check for that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for people that aren't familiar with your firm, with the services you offer, walk us through, how you got started in business and what's the service offering that you provide to your clientele.
Sure. I actually used to work for a bank, and I was a small business banker. And the biggest deficiency I saw when I was taking small business loan applications was getting a balance sheet and a profit and loss, which feels like something basic that you can get, was like pulling teeth. You get incomplete information. You get stuff that's not presented correctly. And even when you get the company's bookkeeper or a CPA involved, it was just a very long process. So after 4 years of seeing that as a huge deficiency in the small business marketplace, I decided to quit my bank, go back to school, become an accountant, and solve that issue from the inside out. So I founded a company called Quick Bookkeeping that was basically with the sole purpose and premise of offering bookkeeping services with a quick turnaround time for all these small businesses that are trying to present financial statements for loans or whatever other situation that they may have. So we founded that back in 2009, and we started from home. We were primarily working remotely with QuickBooks, so we decided to marry into 2 tools. We married into QuickBooks Desktop, because at the time QuickBooks Online was not really a thing, and a tool called LogMeIn, which has passed hands now. I think now it's its own company again. It was its own company. It was bought by the GoToWebinar people and Citrix, and now it's their own company. And now, of course, we work with QuickBooks Online for the most part, because Intuit has given us that tool. But that was basically how we worked. We worked from home. We logged into our clients' QuickBooks files, and we helped them clean up their mess and reconcile the banks and prepare their financial statements. The business quickly evolved into a training business, because we realized that for some of our clients, we were doing the same thing over and over every month. Like this whole proverbial accounting, bookkeeping cleanup process, it just stopped being fun. It was the same thing over and over, right? So we said, you know what if I just show my client how to do it? And yes, I'm shooting myself in the foot and firing myself out of a job there, but then the client will pay double, triple, quadruple what back then was an hourly rate for training. So we saw that as an opportunity to increase our revenues, have higher earning potential. And yes, while we were basically graduating some customers so they do their own accounting, we now had to aggressively look for more do-it-yourselfer type clients that would pay for that service. So we still offer traditional bookkeeping services and remote bookkeeping services. We still offer that, but we evolved into a QuickBooks training and consulting business, and that's where our heart and focus is on helping small businesses not only help them get their books done, but help them by giving them the tools to do it on their own and make them feel that they're in control of the whole process. That was a really digest version of where we started and where we are now.
Cool. And just to round out the corners, what's the team size now?
What is the what?
What's the current team size? Do you employ 1 people, 5 people, 500 people? What's the current team size?
Yeah, we have 7 people in the team, including myself. And the one condition that we have is that we all must be QuickBooks Advanced Pro Advisors. So we have 7 QuickBooks Advanced Pro Advisors in staff. Even the folks that do mostly administrative and sales, they're still QuickBooks Pro advisors because we are very QuickBooks centric. Although we can do other things that it's in the accounting bookkeeping space without QuickBooks, we're 100% QuickBooks centric. So we have 7 people in the team all supporting the QuickBooks software ecosystem.
Perfect. Okay, that's awesome. Congratulations on the growth. And for another context, when did you make the shift? Although I imagine in some ways it was gradual. It's like you don't wake up one day and say, oh, hey, now we're a training business. But was there a specific year that was really a transition year for you where you went from thinking of yourself as a service company to saying, oh, hey, we're actually in the training and content business as well?
So it happened by accident and deceit.
That's where all good things happen.
Right. So what ended up happening was in 2011, I was training some of my clients. I was basically just doing sort of one-on-one QuickBooks training because that was my 3rd year in business and I was starting to evolve from just bookkeeping to training as well. And I put in my Pro Advisor profile that I did training. It was actually pretty much the first word on my description. So it turns out that this big traveling company, the national company that does training, had a trainer scheduled for, let's say, next week, and that person got sick or canceled on them, and they had to quickly find another trainer. They exhausted everyone in their database, and they started literally calling random people off the web that had the word training associated with their name, and they were local to where the training was going to be. This was going to be a training in a hotel. So I got this phone call out of the blue, and somebody called me and said, hey, Hector, we're looking for a person that does QuickBooks training. Do you do that? I said, yes. Well, we have a class of 15 people in so-and-so hotel. We're looking for somebody to do it. This is how much we will pay. Do you do that type of work? And I said, yes. Mind you, I've never done that before that time, but I said, yes. And then they told me, well, how many years of experience you have doing it? And I don't know what was happening through my head. I know I was being interviewed, and I didn't want to, it was my first class. I was reading something that said 12 years, and I said 12 years. And the person said, you're perfect, you're hired. I mean, they did no due diligence. They were just waiting for someone with the confidence to say, yeah, we'll do it. So I hung up the phone, and I was really scared because I'm like, okay, I just set myself up with a high level of expectation. So I've never taught a class in group before. This was in Boca Raton, Florida. I went there the night before, set up the room. I practiced a lot. I took my wife, and we rehearsed all night before, and I taught the class. And because it was something I was very passionate about, whether I had training skills or not, it was a total success. But it was I'm sure it wasn't as good as my classes are now, but I think it was a success because the folks that were there liked it, and seeing them enjoy, how great it feels to now have a new tool, a new piece of knowledge that they can apply to the real world. It had a very high sense of satisfaction for me. And after that class, I said, I must make this my new living. So I basically started advertising my own classes. A couple of years later, I built my own classroom. I saved up all my profits, my classes. I built up my own classroom, and I basically dedicated the next 6 years of my professional life teaching QuickBooks almost every weekend here next to my classroom. Now I have taken on a protege that now teaches the classes, and I focus on online training and YouTube videos only. But that's how I got started into it, and that's how I progressed into what I do now.
And for further context, what's your YouTube channel up to right now? Subscribers and total video views?
Yeah, so we have about 600 videos uploaded to date. And I've been at it for about 4 years. I started October 2nd, 2014 was my first video. I won't forget that. And I have about 3 million lifetime views across all the videos and 23,000 subscribers.
Wow, that's awesome. I mean, I imagine when you started. Well, actually, let's start here. I want to, I do have a question I want to touch upon in a little bit, which is talking about how you got your first customers, how you made your first hires, what you've learned scaling up from just you to a team of 7. And I think there's probably a lot of learnings there. But before we do, walk me through the mindset of, okay, I'm going to put everything on YouTube. I mean, you mentioned it earlier where you kind of realize you might be shooting yourself in your foot if you do this, but you thought, well, this will better position us as experts the more we disperse this knowledge. But were you a video marketer guru? Had you done videos before? Walk us through, the first, 3, 6, 20 videos you put online, and why you kept going with it.
Sure. So I got a multiple prong answer to that. So the first strategy was, let me create a webinar series that focuses around QuickBooks, where I could take my 4 or 5 years worth of teaching in a classroom and now teach the things that came up that I learned while teaching. Because one of the great things about teaching is that it is the biggest enabled for learning. The person that learns the most in the classroom is always the teacher. And people don't realize that. And I explain to you why. Because when you go from 0 to 1, let's say somebody that knows nothing to learn something new, that's pretty simple. It's a clean slate. It is easy to teach someone something that they don't know. But when you are a trainer, an expert in the matter, and let's say you are an 8 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10, just going up one notch is very difficult because you've been there, done that. So being exposed to teaching and teaching to all sorts of different people will now expose you to questions and problems that come up in the classroom. And even some of the students answer the other students, and you get to observe this just new creation of ideas around how to do things in QuickBooks or how to manage particular accounting events and that sort of thing. So I basically kept a catalog. I have a little book where every single time I taught a class, I wrote down what I learned as a teacher from it. So usually it's from the questions I get from the students or frustrations that students told me where they were trying to do something and it didn't work. So I wrote the stuff down, and I basically created a webinar series around what I call advanced topics, kind of like not the obvious things that you learn in a book, but the things that you learn in practice. And the webinar series is called QB Power Hour. It's a free webinar series. You go to qbpowerhour.com. You can register. It's still alive today. And we started that, summer of 2014, and we went live on October 2nd, and we used the recording of that webinar, and I posted it on YouTube because I thought it was going to be an easy place for people to watch the replay. I never thought myself as a YouTuber. I never thought I was going to dedicate any time to YouTube. I use YouTube as a tool to deliver the recordings of that webinar series. But what ended up happening is as I monitor the YouTube channel, people are asking questions in the YouTube channel. And this is now a replica of the experiences I had in the classroom of now people asking the questions that students were asking me while I was teaching live. So I saw YouTube as an extension of my training experience. And when the comments said, I wish you did a video on reconciliation. I wish you did a video on inventory. All this feedback started coming in. I started basically prioritizing the stuff that people asked for the most. I started making it. Now, all this stuff is without a profit motive. And if you remember the movie by Kevin Costner with the baseball field called If You Build It, They Will Come, It was kind of like that. I actually didn't know what was going to happen, but deep inside, I had faith that it will build it, they will come, and I don't know what that day means and what come means, but it turned into something. I can go into that briefly. So I started posting the webinar series, and I also started posting my own videos that I was responding to requests online. What I learned really briefly was that if I just give people my email address at the end of the video and say, hey, if you have a question about this, just email me, which, by the way, more work, more non-billable work, more time away from my money-making activities, it was going to give me even more exposure. So I ended up started getting questions via email that were a lot deeper than the questions that people could ask on a public forum like YouTube. So people would actually send me screenshots and specific examples. And basically, at that point, I had to decide, okay, am I here to give free technical support to the world, or am I here to run a business? So I basically have an internal policy that if I can answer the question within 2 minutes, I'll answer it. If not, I will politely suggest that we set up a 1 hour or 2 hour appointment so we can address it personally, remotely, and turned that into a remote consulting, remote training opportunities. And I got to tell you, 9 out of 10, those turn into permanent clients afterwards. Just because they gave you the entrance point into their books by setting up a 1-hour appointment to kind of review what's going on, and then you turn them into clients really, really quickly because you are being helpful up front, because you're adding value up front. And people are always attracted to folks that do that because they're a dime a dozen. They're so difficult to find. People that are out there adding value up front and building it, expecting that they'll come without putting a price tag up front. So building my YouTube channel and my webinar series and providing this sort of email support that I do as much as possible has opened up a floodgate of opportunities to deal with clients. And now it gets to the point where I can actually choose the ones that I want to deal with. So if there's ones that are not within my specialty, I can refer it to someone else, and hint, I can have a partnership with someone else that would pay me a percentage for those referrals. So it's a win-win. But then I pick the ones I want to deal with, like inventory, data import, kind of my areas of specialty. And I get to basically pick and choose my clients from all over the world that find me through YouTube. And that's my marketing. I don't pay for marketing. I don't run ads. I don't need to. All I have to do is explain to the world what I'm capable of, and a million will watch it and not pay you. But if you get 0.1% of that million, and you get a couple $1,000 from that 0.1%, then you have an incredibly functional and profitable business model. So that's how that whole thing has evolved to me now spending 20 to 25% of my time just creating content in my YouTube channel. And I also create, you mentioned that I was creating some blog articles for Intuit. I do that so I can plug my video. So I write an article about a video, or use the video as a complement to the article, and I use them in conjunction to drive traffic to each other.
I love it. I love it, and I love the point. And so, if people are listening, I think it's really fascinating to pick up on what you just said, which is 20 to 25% of your time per week is spent on videos. And I think if somebody's listening and maybe they don't do videos, I think the concept here is you're spending 20 to 25% of your time connecting with your target audience in some way. Now, for some people, that might be networking events or lunch and learns or writing or creating content or whatever it may be. But to me, you're spending 20 to 25% in sales and marketing activity, but the way you go about it is creating content. So you're building this audience, you're adding value up front, which some of the best marketing does that. We've seen that time and time again. You kind of give free materials or free books or whatever it may be. I think that's extremely thoughtful, and I love how specific you were about the percentage of time you spend to those activities. A really tactical question I had for you is when you mentioned somebody asks you for technical support, and I think for most people listening, we've all gotten that email, and you're like, should I answer it? Should I not answer it? Should I charge them? Should I not charge them? And you kind of do this mental juggle. I really like the rule you set up. If it's under 2 minutes, I'll just answer it. If not, they set up the 1-hour appointment. Is that a 1-hour appointment that they have to pay for? And if so, if you don't mind disclosing, what do they end up paying for that 1-hour appointment? How do you think about that initial appointment?
So I try to charge for that 1 or 2 hour appointment. I try to. And when I say I try to, it means that it is my intention to do it. One of the cool things about email is that when people email you your question, I would say 9 times out of 10, especially a serious businessman or a serious company, will have a signature. And that signature provides just so much content, so much context. So before I answer the email and before I offer maybe a free 1 hour, I look at the website, look at the company, search them in social media. You gotta see what they are. And if I see this is the type of company, it is the type of company that I can extract a lot from, such as maybe training. And give me a second. Yeah, you can edit this, right?
Sure. We can go through it. We'll probably just run through it because look, while you're,
hold on. Yeah.
I'm
good. I just heard the phone ringing.
So okay.
I'm just gonna pick up where I started.
Okay. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Yeah. And if I see this is the type of company that I can draw a great opportunity from, by looking at their website or their employee size or their industry. And through experience, I kind of know, okay, these people are going to have inventory issues. They're definitely going to want to retain my services. I gauge it from there. So if I see it's a big opportunity to do a large project, like upgrading them to QuickBooks Enterprise or getting them into some sort of inventory management system, something that I know I'm going to get $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 potentially from, with a combination of services and maybe commissions, because I do sell software as well. I may entertain maybe not a 1-hour call, but maybe a 15-minute call to just kind of discuss their issues, discuss the situation. But for the most part, when it is a call specifically to log into their computer, look at the chart of accounts, look at the reconciliation issues, make an adjustment, and show them what to do and how to fix it. For that, I will always charge. And right now, I'm trying to charge about $350 for that 1 hour or $500 for 2 hours. But I don't want anyone to get hung up on numbers.
Yeah.
Anytime, because the numbers are all relevant. They all mean different things to different people. I think in the marketplace, I may be, in terms of hourly rate, possibly a little bit high. But remember, I added a whole bunch of value up front, and I already filtered out a lot of customers by showing them all the basic stuff. By the time that they get to me, they're in dire need. They already watched 2 or 3 videos. They try to do it themselves.
Yeah.
And the most important thing is because they tried it themselves, they know the difficulty. They know and value, somebody else spending 15 years of their life dedicated to do nothing but that. So when they call and you give them a price, that's not the price is usually not a problem. And also, I put that price in my signature saying, hey, hire me for this, hire me for that. That way, when I respond, whether I respond to the quick answer or not, some people reply back saying, oh, I read your signature. You know what? I want to hire you. Sometimes they don't even make the offer, and they reply saying that they want to hire me. But it takes an incredible amount of discipline to, as you said, take out 2 hours a day, 1 day a week, whatever that 20-25% looks like, to add value up front. But you get it back by commanding what I feel are better fees, and also choosing the customers that add value to yourself as a practitioner and that add value to your greater mission. My greater mission is to get better and better and better in the software. And if I'm spending my whole week reconciling bank accounts and doing repetitive work, I'm not getting better at it. So when I'm being challenged consistently with the difficult situations, that helps my mission. So I get to pick and choose the customers and projects that help me with my mission, and I also get to be selective enough that I can charge the fees that I want to command to make up for the non-billable time I spend to add that value up front. So that sort of out of feeds itself.
Got it. I love that. If there's, to summarize and there's many takeaways, I'm jotting down a bunch of notes here, but I think it's really important to hammer home that, 1 day a week, and maybe if you're listening right now, it's not starting that 1 day a week right now, but it's maybe building up to that, having that goal if that's where you want to be. And it could be creating content. We talked with one firm owner that they started carving out, I don't remember the percentage of time off the top of my head, but they every month would spend X number of hours just reviewing existing client files and giving them up, a kind of CFO level or advisory level information about their firm free of charge, right? Whether they're doing cash flow forecasting or anything else, or just doing some benchmark analysis. Hey, this is where this is where your company's at now. This is what it is against industry benchmark, and they would do that because they actually wanted to, start launching additional services. So they said, look, let's just add value. Let's be advisors to our existing clients and carve out the time. So I absolutely love that, and I really enjoy the point of, look, if you have an inquiry, look them up before you call them and try to understand the company size and maybe the context of where they're coming in from and how big they are and their location. And I think you can look at the website, you can look at LinkedIn, you can look at a number of places and really understand, the type of lead that is coming in. And of course, if people want to put the prices in the email signature, hey, more power to you, right? Because most people then come on the call knowing your price already. So you've already overcome that major objection.
Right. And I want to add to that one of the things that also was very transformative to me was the adoption of value pricing. Although I state my 1 hour or 2 hour rate for my first meeting, because it is more of a marketing tactic than anything else, I typically don't retain people under those circumstances. What I really try to do is, after the client paid up front for that first hour or two, for me to both solve a problem and assess the bigger issue, is I try to afterwards come up with a flat fee that is commensurate to the value I am delivering, and above that, that way I dig deep enough to try to figure out exactly what the client wants, and I don't get trapped into that hourly type of work. So although I wanted to clarify, although I do state my first hour or my first 2 hour rate for the purpose of filtering my leads coming in through email, I do try to then engage them into a value price or a fixed price engagement. So I'm kind of a hybrid when it comes to that. Although I am fully vested in pricing based on value, I still quote my first hour rate because it also helps a lot with your first interaction. Like if you're talking to someone that's asking for technical support and they're completely shocked and flabbergasted by the concept of paying $350 for 1 hour, well, they just self-selected themselves out. Even if in the long run they're not going to pay that, if they can't pay the first $350, you probably don't want them as a client anyway. So that was my philosophy. I don't think it's 100% right, but it is my technique, right? So and it's worked for me.
Got it. And on that journey of moving to value pricing, were there tools, tricks, tactics, strategies, resources? What helped you get into that mindset? What's helped with that transition that people should be aware of?
The only trick is mindset. That's the only trick. There's nothing else. There's no tool. There's no spreadsheet. There's no gimmicks. There's no cheat sheets. It's only mindset. Let me explain what that is after I tell you where I learned that. So I read a book called Implementing Value Pricing by Ron Baker. I think it is a must read to anyone that's in our line of work, or maybe lawyers and IT consultants. They should all read that book, Implementing Value Pricing. And I also listened to 2 podcasts that I think are very essential to getting your head around that mindset change. One of it is called The Soul of Enterprise. One of the hosts is the same author of that book. And the other one is called Art of Value by Kurt Bowman. And both of those podcasts have helped me think through the whole value pricing and value centric practice mindset that I've had to change. But what do I mean by mindset? You have to somehow unlearn that your customers want or care about how you track your own time. Like we all assume when we first get started that if something takes 10 hours to do, it's worth the equivalent of 10 hours times the number. Or we assume that if something is hard, and that hard means it took between 20 and 30 hours, it's worth more, okay? And that's really not what it is. I mean, what really, really matters is the results, is what you deliver at the end, is your capacity to solve your client's issue and put them in the right path. If it took you 40 hours, 1 hour, 30 minutes, 2 seconds, 50 hours, the result is ultimately what measures it. So if you are in the type of business that what you do is very low value, like data entry and bookkeeping, which is what I started my company doing in the first place, you're almost always going to be in that trap because your client will not see you as anything else than a data entry or a bookkeeper. So it's going to be very, very hard, even if you value price, to get your money's worth, or you get your value back from your customer. But when you focus on understanding your client's real problems, helping them solve through the problems, being an agent of change, being a person that dedicates 20% of their time creating content that forces you to learn it more, and that's a really important piece about video making for me, is that I have learned more through making videos than I've done with anything else. Because if I'm going to make a video about making inventory adjustments, for example, I have to absolutely master the tool and the technique and discuss all the circumstances around it in order to make a really good video. So that requires me to research and find out and go deep. So the process of creating content is also a self-discovery process of getting yourself to become better and better. So my mindset shift was twofold. One, I'm going to invest my time on becoming a better technician and a better consultant. So when I'm pricing a service, I know I have the confidence to serve the client, satisfy their needs, and go above and beyond what they're asking for. So it's that mindset shift of forgetting about time as being anything that's worth anything, especially your time, as a basis of pricing. But the other side of the coin here is that the time that it takes you to do something, even though it's not relevant, the time that you save your client is. So if it takes you 10 or 20 hours to do something, but you're going to save your clients 50 hours by you doing it instead of them doing it, or you're going to save them anxiety or force them to have to learn something that they don't have to learn how to do anymore because you're serving them, that's where you have to price around. You price around what time you're giving them back to work on their business, not the time that you're spending doing whatever it is that you're doing. And it takes time, and you'll get it wrong many times, and you'll price things wrong, and you will have scope creep, and you will redo, and you will go through a frustration. But if you do it enough, you will get to the point where you'll learn how to pick up on those potential red flags or potential projects that are in fact worth a lot more than what you're quoting, and you learn how to quote them higher, and you learn how to be okay with people saying no. And that is the mindset change. Nothing else. There's no technique. There's no spreadsheets. There's no tools. If you go through that transformation internally in your head, you will be in the path to value pricing, I believe.
I love it. I love it. And for everybody listening, if you want to hear, you mentioned Ron Baker and implementing value pricing. We've done interviews with Ron, so we'll link that up in the show notes on this episode. We've done interviews with Ed Kless, who I believe is the co-host of Soul of Enterprise, right? And
that's right.
We also did interviews with Kirk Bowman, who hosts the Art of Value podcast. So if you guys want to do a quick deep dive and to explore these topics or these podcasts, we'll link everything below this on the Jetpack Workflow blog when this episode goes live. And we'll link up to the books and everything else mentioned. But I wanted to let you know that we've interviewed a handful of people about value pricing. And obviously there's some very, very, very strong supporters of it. So that's great to hear. I know we're going to be butting up against time here in a second. Your growth in your team is really fascinating, and we probably won't have enough time to explore this in depth. But you have 7 team members. At a high level, what is your methodology for managing those 7? What does a typical week or every 2 weeks look like? How often do you have team meetings? Do you do one-on-ones? How do you think about retention or growing those team members? At a high level, what have you done to build that pulse in the organization?
So I wish I could speak about that part with as much confidence as I speak about video making. So I will confess to you that management is the new frontier for me. I'm not by all means an expert at it, but there's a couple of basic I would say, conceptually speaking, there's a couple of basic traits that people need to have to work in my team. One is you need to be devoted to mastering your craft. If you're not in here if you're not working with me to master your craft, you're not supposed to work with me, right? Because I lead by example. So I'm not going to hire anyone just to hire them. I'm only hiring someone that wants to, I'm going to call it, be like me. Okay, it's extremely important. So I have to make sure that I lead by example in terms of technical skills and advisory skills to make sure that my team members see in me what they can see in themselves in the short, near, and long-term future. So that's one of them. The second one that I do is that if I have someone that's talented enough to make him a partner, give him a piece of the business. That way they're involved in marketing and decision making. They're not just collecting a paycheck. And it is a lot for me to give out because I have to give them a percentage of the sales and all that stuff. But when you start doing that, and I have two folks in my team like that, we start doing them, they will really surprise you what really great things that they can do because they have skin in the game. And third is they must just love our customers. Like if they don't love what they do, what we do, and why we do it, they're gonna have a real tough time working with me. So that's basically just sort of an attitude, just like the attitude traits that a team member of mine needs to have. The other piece, in terms of you were asking about management, is we do try to over communicate. So we adopted Slack a couple of years ago, and we've been extremely happy with it. What we do is we talk through issues in Slack, and we document situations, and we ask each other questions. And almost all of our Slack channels are open, even though some are meant only for two people to speak. We keep them open so everybody else can observe the conversation and extract potential experience from it. We also do at least monthly team meetings, and we spend a lot of time in the monthly team meetings really talking about what you learned the last month. So we ask everyone, hey, what did you learn the last month? And we place a lot of stock on the value on what you were individually learning that now needs to be transferred to a team learning approach. And because I lead by example with my videos, every one of my employees tends to want to watch my videos. I don't really ask anyone or force anyone to watch my videos. I make it in such a way that I tell them to watch it, and they all watch my videos, and they indirectly learn from me that way. And in some cases, we've had team meetings where one particular video, a question they had around it, became the entire theme of the meeting because somebody watched it and didn't understand something. And that's something that I probably would not have found the time to pinpoint that they had difficulty with that particular concept. But doing that is actually really powerful. So my videos serve as an incredible mechanism for me to transfer my knowledge, enhance my knowledge by learning it, by marketing my services, and also transferring some of my knowledge to my employees. So we do those weekly meetings, and there's always one-on-one. So I always look for opportunities to enhance every single person's individual skills. But I will confess, because my team members will listen to this, I will confess that I don't spend enough time with each of you guys individually, and I wish I could, and it is my next frontier is to just get better at management as a whole, and also one-on-one mentoring. But the way I communicate with them now in terms of technical skills, the primary source is my YouTube channel.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, and I appreciate the openness, right? I mean, I think all of us can continue to sharpen our skills, and that's bringing that mindset to every part of the craft. So it's clearly technical skills, but I mean, in the same way you learn technical skills, it's the same process to learn management skills. It's the same process to learn marketing skills, sales skills, whatever it may be. So I think it's a powerful place to be, saying, I'm still on this journey, right? As a small note, one resource that internally at Jetpack we've had, I went through it. All of our team leads have gone through it. It has extremely high, satisfaction scores amongst us internally. Is called Manager Tools Pro, and it's one of the most understandable, tactical courses, and they have a free podcast series. So very much in the vein in which you run your business, they do the same thing with theirs. So they have most of their content is entirely free. It's on the podcast, Manager Tools Basics, Manager Tools Pro. They really do a good job of constructing one-on-ones, delegating, mentoring, coaching, how to give effective feedback. It's a great resource for everyone. Again, this is something we constantly go back at Jetpack and take a look at these resources. So we'll be sure to link that up, and I can send that over after this interview. Hector, this has been... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I absolutely agree with you. And one thing I wanted to add to that is, in today's age, there really is almost no excuse for someone saying, I don't know how to do that, right? And there's a lot of stuff that I don't do. Like I still don't do my landscaping and my AC and my plumbing. And although I could probably figure out how to do it online, I don't. I let the professionals do that. But when it has to do with what you do with the craft, with your craft, there's no excuse of saying, I don't know how to do that. I mean, there's either a book that explains it, or a podcast dedicated to it, or a YouTube channel around it, or a blog, or multiple blogs. and articles around it. So the content is out there. The challenge is that people always come back and say, well, okay, fine, the content's out there, I just don't have time. And that is false, okay? No one doesn't have time. I could probably argue someone in jail maybe doesn't have time, or somebody in death row doesn't have time, but everybody else has time. They just choose to spend it somewhere else or doing something else. You know, everybody sleeps 8 hours. Almost everybody takes the weekend off. Almost everybody, logs out of work around 8 or something. Almost everybody spends an hour or two eating a day. There are times out of the day that you carve out because they're essential to something else, family time, sleep, whatever. Well, developing your business and sharpening your skills, it's one of those essential things that you must carve out time. It is as essential as eating, sleeping, going to church, or whatever. So if you start a business or build a business around, I'm going to spend 100% of my capacity working in my business, then you will always work at your capacity. You will always be at capacity, which is great, but you will always be limited to the amount of hours you can spend working in your clients. But when you carve out time to work on your business, developing your business, developing your brand, developing your skills and your team skills, it's going to be a huge cost up front because it's going to be a huge opportunity cost. But second year, third year, it starts coming back double, triple, quadruple. It is amazing the return on investment that you get on spending time on honing your skills, developing team members and partners, sharing your knowledge, and spending that time marketing rather than being heads down working on client work all the time. So it's absolutely essential. The information is out there, so the resources are out there for you to learn. And I got to tell you, the other side of the coin is if you find yourself wanting to learn something and you come back and say, Hector, I checked. I Googled it. There's no books. There's no YouTube channel. There's no podcast. The information is not out there at all. But you know what? You just found the next business opportunity. Your business opportunity is to create the content around that because there will be people like you looking for that stuff. So you're either in a prime position to learn the information that's out there or in a prime position to create the information that is not out there. So in today's age, there's absolutely no excuse, in my opinion.
I love it. I love it. And, if Hector, if somebody wants to reach out, ask you a question, say thank you for coming on, learn more about your services, follow your podcast, look at your YouTube videos, see your webinars, read your content. I mean, there's so much that you do. What is the best way for them to connect with you?
My website, hectorgarcia.com.
Awesome. So they can go there. That's hectorgarcia.com. And if you're running through the woods, if you're swimming in the middle of the ocean and listening to this podcast, if you're on a boat in the middle of Antarctica and you say, oh my gosh, I can't get in front of a computer right now, how am I ever going to write down these resources? And you need to find a way to track these links, go to jetpackworkflow.com/blog. You're going to see an article with the name Hector Garcia on it. If you click into that, we are going to list the podcasts you've talked about, the people you've talked about, links to your website. We're also going to link up to your YouTube channel. Everything will be there, and we're so excited to hear the feedback on this episode. Hector, thank you so much for coming on today's show.
You're welcome. I wish I was that person on an island without internet, completely disconnected.
But still listening to the podcast. It is possible. So.
Correct.
Well, hey, thanks again.
All right, bye-bye.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Growing Your Firm presented by Jetpack Workflow. If you like the episode, be sure to leave a review. And if you want to stay up to date on all future episodes, be sure to subscribe below. Thank you so much.